Hey there, I am so glad you're here. Come on in and enjoy Coffee Chat at the Cubbyhole. Okay, you might be thinking, coffee sounds fun, but girl, what is the Cubbyhole? The Cubbyhole was a divine little nudge on my heart, if you will, to build this space in our basement, in our home, where our friends and family could come and receive encouragement and love. And that's exactly what we've been doing. I've always known that the Cubbyhole would have a ripple effect out into the world, that it could bring encouragement and hope, not just to people that could visit here in person. That is exactly why I do Coffee Chats. I get to take some of the coolest people that are just like you and just like me, who have skill and talent, but most importantly, they have a vulnerable, relatable story that we can all glean some hope and encouragement from. So grab a coffee, cozy up, and enjoy Coffee Chats at the Cubbyhole. Well, hey everybody, welcome to Coffee Chat at the Cubbyhole. I am so glad you're here. It is so fun to be back in the Cubbyhole today. I realize how comfy and cozy it is. Last week I was coming to you live for our Coffee Chat from behind the library near Traverse City, Michigan, sitting on a stoop with the computer propped up on a bench. God is good. He provided that Wi-Fi. He provided such a cool opportunity and space for me to have that awesome coffee chat with my beautiful friend, Nicole. Okay, let's get right to it. Today, I really believe is going to pierce your heart so strongly. If you answer yes to this question, have you ever felt like you have a stirring in your heart? There's a nudging, a God-given calling to reach out, branch out, brave the abundance of just answering that calling. But if you've ever been caught in fear and doubt and you just keep putting it off and saying, no, it's not for me, or I'll do it later, this is going to speak directly to your heart, this coffee chat today. I can't wait to introduce and share with you my beautiful friend, Kate Battistelli. Kate is so many awesome things. She is an author. She's a speaker, an actress, singer. She actually starred on Broadway in The King and I with Yul Brynner. She has such an incredible resume. She is the author of not other books, but this book right now is this book spoke to me so deeply. I read it this last winter. It's called The God Dare, as you can see. She's going to talk about her journey through these fears and these doubts, and she's put together this book in such a cool way. I cannot wait to share her with you. But before I bring her in, I would love to share this video with you because it really gives a great foundation of why she wrote the book and a little bit of her story. So I'll bring her in just a minute, but for now, let's check out this video.
Imagine a young single woman with the dream to be a Broadway star who moves to New York City to pursue that dream and win a Tony. She works hard, but she's unaware of what door God is about to open and how it will change her life forever. I'm Kate Battistelli, and when I was just 26 and I didn't know Jesus, God lifted me out of the chorus of the national Broadway tour of The King and I, and he took me from understudy to leading lady overnight in the role of a lifetime, starring opposite Yul Brynner for more than 1,000 performances. Was I terrified? Yes. But sometimes God asks us to do it afraid. I gave God my heart at age 29, and he took me on a very different path than the one I was on, asking me to trust and follow when it made no sense. My new book, The God Dare, invites you to think bigger and trust deeper than ever before, and choose to believe the impossible for your life, because the impossible is God's comfort zone. To trust that God has a plan beyond your wildest dreams, knowing he's daring you to step out of your comfort zone. A God Dare asks, what if we say yes? It's hard, but it's always worth it to go where God is calling us to go. What's a God Dare? It's simple. It's God's yes, his gigantic smile and nod of the head, his holy high five beckoning us to believe. begging us to take him at his word and once and for all let go of fear and doubt and say yes to his yes. It's God's offer to choose to be chosen, to say yes to his magnificent plan for your life. Now, I never won that Tony, and in spite of an abortion at 18, a miscarriage, and 4 failed adoption attempts, God gave me and my husband a wonderful daughter, Francesca Battistelli, and 5 beautiful grandchildren. He isn't done with me yet, and he isn't done with you either. So join me and 14 Bible heroes, and let's figure out what God is daring you to do. Because taking the God dare changes everything.
Is she incredible or what? Oh my gosh, she warms my heart. I love that I get to call her friend. She's just spoken into my life in so many ways. And I know she's going to speak to your heart as well. She's joining us live. I'd love to bring her in right now. Without further ado, Kate Battistelli coming to us from Franklin, Tennessee. How are you, girl?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Marlo. It's chilly here this morning. We've had a weather change overnight.
I know.
It got cold in Tennessee.
Same in Michigan. All I can say is I'm glad I was camping last week and not this week. That is a blessing all in itself.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's so good to have you here. There's so many great things I know you're going to share, but I just wanted to thank you. First of all, we've done this before and had some technical difficulties. So here we are doing this again. I just wanted to thank you so much for your time. I know how busy you are.
Oh, I'm always glad to talk to you, Marlo. I love you.
I love you too. And Mike, your hubby, Mike, I was so excited to be able to swing in and visit you guys when I was there in Tennessee and go out to dinner. And I got to try fried pickles. It was such a great time.
That's true. Yep. Fried pickles. Yep. They're amazing. Only in Tennessee.
Exactly. I love it. We had such a good time. I want to just jump right into this because you have so much to share about speaking into the hearts of people that are just fearful, doubtful about having a calling on their life, and they're procrastinating. They're putting it off, or they're just like, no, you know what? It's not for me. I don't want to do it. I'm too scared.
Yeah.
You have this incredible book. I've read it. I pray that people will just go on Amazon and buy it because, and the holidays are coming. What a perfect, it's hard to believe that we're in October or September and the holidays are going to be before we know it. Such a great gift for others. But tell us, okay, so it's called the God Dare. And tell us what that phrase God dare means to you.
Well, to me, a God dare, it's just that crazy idea that God drops in your spirit and you think, whoa, that is so cool, God, but it's just too big for me. It's too far out of my comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And it is because God knows we can't do it on our own. If we could do it on our own, what do we need God for, right? Mm-hmm. Because the impossible, like I say in the book, the impossible is God's comfort zone. We can do the possible. That's our comfort zone. That's what we can do. But the impossible, the crazy things that God does, the opening blind eyes, the raising the dead, we need him to do those things. He'll use us as his vessel. He'll pour through us and do those things, but we cannot do those things on our own. Mm-hmm. For me to have written my first book 8 years ago, there was no way that was going to happen without God. Oh, right. I was not a writer. I don't have a college degree. There was nothing on earth that was going to get me to write a book other than God pushing me, pretty much shoving me out of my comfort zone, saying, you're going to do this. He had to, I say in the book, he triple dog dared me because he did. I mean, there was just, it was nowhere in my brain that I was going to write a book, but until God pretty much dared me to do it. And I realized that after I did it, I thought, God, you dared me, didn't you? And when I realized that, I thought, I bet you did this all through the Bible. And I started rereading the Bible with that in my mind, kind of thinking, let me look at these Bible heroes and look at them through that lens of daring. And, the way he called them, you can call it the way he called people, but I look at it as a dare. And I started seeing it, just the different ways that he called people. Just take a look at Abraham. Abraham, leave behind everything you know and go to a land that I'll tell you about, or I'll show you. I'm not going to tell you, but I'll show you. You just trust me. And Abraham left behind everything he knew and followed God. And he was 75 years old. This is a man that at that point, think of the 75-year-olds that they just want to, hang out and be comfortable and not really give up everything walk away from it and follow God to something completely new. And Abraham was a heathen. He was a pagan. He didn't know God.
Oh,
but God somehow speaks to him, and Abraham goes, okay, yeah, that sounds like it makes sense.
yeah.
And does it, and think of Moses in the backside of the desert, killed a guy 40 years before, is hiding as far away as he can get from Egypt. And God appears to him in a burning bush, like that makes sense.
Right.
And says, come out of that now and lead these millions of people out of bondage into the promised land. I mean, just these things that make no sense, but they did them. They came out of their comfort zone. They did the completely scary thing, but they couldn't do it on their own. They had to have God to guide them and do it. I mean, I just started seeing it all through scripture, and I thought, all right, I've got to write this down. I have to it just started pouring out of me. Some books are easy to write. Some are hard to write. It was easy to write. Just took me a long time.
I'm just so thankful that you did. Some really cool things that you just said there. It's almost like, he pushed you out of the plane, right? But what he equipped you with is I love the phrase, the backpack of faith. And you had the courage to say, okay, I know I have this on me, this backpack. I'm just going to leap and I'm going to do this. And you just said it was an awesome little tidbit of advice right there, that he'll do the impossible. Yeah. All we have to do is the possible. And you know what? We can try it. We can do it. And we'll know, and God will lead us. If it's if it's really his calling for us, just step out and do the possible. It right there can help take the fear and the doubt away, that I'm just going to take a step. Because so many people live in regret that they don't take the step, and then it's just killing them on the inside. So
it's about trust. I don't think any of us ever feel equipped.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine any of us actually ever feel like, I got this, God. Yeah. I'm gonna knock this out of the park.
Exactly.
All of us are trembling in our boots, don't you think?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And you know what I always say is that if we don't have that little stirring of that little anxiety or that nervousness with it, then it's not done with humility. I think hopefully we never lose that. And and some people just get it so confused with, well, if I'm feeling that feeling, it must mean I'm not meant to do it. And I'm just so thankful. I can't wait to talk about all the stories that you have. But let's start in the beginning. In the beginning of your book, your foreword is written by, as the video just said, and I was talking about my promo, that you just happen to be the mama of not only a Dove Award winner, but a Grammy Award-winning performer, Francesca Battistelli. So cool. I'm going to put in the comments I love so many of her songs, but her breakup song, I'm going to talk about that.
I know, I love that song.
So good.
And that's the perfect song for this book, just to break up with fear, because fear is the thing that stops us. And I think if we just break up with fear, step out of the boat, because one thing I say in the God Dare, where God calls you, he equips you. If he's truly called you to do the thing, he'll equip you to do it. Like for me to write my first book, it was like, it made no sense, but I knew he called me. So he had to equip me. That's his job. Yeah. If he's calling you to do it, he's got to equip you. He's got to send you the help. He's got to give you what you need to accomplish that thing. And he did do that for me, and he'll do it for you too. And he'll give you the courage as you step out. It's going to get a little easier. At first, it'll be hard and it'll be scary and it'll be, your knees will be trembling. But the more you walk with him, the further you go into it, he's going to be there. I call it's like a cosmic bungee jump. Yeah, that's what it feels like at first. It's like you're bungee jumping. And in the natural, I would never do a bungee jump. But with God, I'll do it every time because I know he'll catch me. In the natural, I don't trust the guy running the bungee jump thing. I know he could mess up. The cord could break, but with the Lord, he's always going to be there. I don't ever trust that the Lord's going to let the cord snap and I'm going to crash and burn on the rocks below. That's never going to happen with God, as long as I know that it's him. And the way that I know that is that I've really prayed through. I've gotten good prayer from other mature Christians. You want to know that this is really the Lord. You don't want to just step out and do something crazy. You think, I think I'm supposed to move across the world to be a missionary in a foreign country. Know that before you go by getting, good counsel and prayer and confirmation. I always tell people, get confirmation before you step out and do something crazy. But if you get the nudge to talk to your neighbor about the Lord, you don't need a lot of prayer and confirmation to do that.
Right.
That you just do, just be brave and do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Some
Right,
things
exactly.
you don't need a whole lot of prayer for.
Yeah, and your heart will. I'll tell you. I explain it to my kids that just, taking that leap of faith that God will be there. It's kind of, I picture it like a runway for a plane. Sometimes we're looking at the whole big picture, but he'll give us just the light bulb right in front of us, just step by step to get us where he wants us to go, just the next step. And all we can do is have that backpack of faith and move to the next step. And like you said, I love that, talking to your tribe of women and believers that can pray for you and oh my gosh, confirmation.
Yeah.
This doesn't happen overnight. So knowing that we're waiting on that confirmation with these callings, it's so helpful. But just doing the work and the possible in the meantime. But going back to your forward with Francesca writing that, she's so busy as well, just like you. That must have been so meaningful to you. Your daughter writing the forward of your book. What an honor.
It was. And she did it for the first book too. So it was really very meaningful. Because she's got now 5 kids and back then she had 4 and it's a lot when you've got that many children.
Right. Oh yeah.
I only had the one. So I've never known what I kind of know when all the grandkids come over, but I've never had that many kids at one time to have to raise and, take care of. So it's a lot to have that many children and, and just in a career and homeschooling and all the things that she does. So yeah, it was an honor for me for her to take the time to do that. It was real meaningful.
I can only imagine. That is so it's such a I know she's proud of you, and I can only imagine the pride that you have. And we'll talk about that in a minute too. But in the introduction of your book, you talk about how God has given He's equipped so many people in the Bible, like you were talking about Abraham and Moses that said, I'm too old. And some people even say, I'm too young, or, and I love that you referred to Abraham at his age. Like it's never too late. And so all of these things that you mentioned in the book, I'd love for you to talk about that. But then what do you find, and I know you talk about it in your book, is the remedy for this analysis paralysis or the excuse paralysis?
We give so many excuses to the Lord. I mean, I did when he first told me to write a book. It was like, God, I just gave God 100 excuses. He just ignored them, just like he did with Moses. I love when Moses is like, no, God, I can't. I'm this, I'm that. I'm too afraid. I'm blah, blah, blah. God finally just basically said, shut up. And your brother's going to come along. You're going to do it.
You're doing it.
He did not allow Moses to say no because Moses was his choice.
Right.
Some people, he just, I guess, allows them to go away. Who's the guy? The Billy Graham of Africa. I can't think of his name right now, but the famous evangelist. I can't think of his name, but the big evangelist of Africa that God told him, he said, you were my third choice. Mm-hmm. I wish I could think of his name. Famous guy. But God let him know. He said, there were 2 other guys I picked before you, that you were the third one, which is very humbling. And he died recently, but he brought millions of people to the Lord. Mm-hmm. But imagine what that would be like to know that you're my third choice. It would be a good thing to know that you're not the first one that I picked. But imagine what those other 2 are going to find out when they get to heaven, that, hey, that could have been you, but who knows why they said no. Mm-hmm. But I think we're so quick to let fear stop us. And I don't know why we do that, other than because we always want this guaranteed outcome. We want to know, how is it going to turn out? And we just don't know that until we step out. We don't know how it's going to turn out until we step out. Yes, we could mess it up. I mean, it could just not turn out the way we thought, mm-hmm. We could fail. Well, okay, but we're going to learn a lot. Failure actually is a great teacher, but typically if God's calling us to do it, it's probably not going to fail. It's probably going to turn out just the way God wanted it to. But I think a lot of times, particularly for a lot of women, I think we feel like, I've messed up too much. God can't use me because of sins of the past. Right. For me, for sins when I was young, like I mentioned in my book trailer, when I was 18, I got pregnant. Now, this is in 1972. This was before Roe v. Wade. This was before people trumpeted, about having abortions and all that thing, now people are proud of it and think it's like a great thing and woman's right and all that stuff. Well, back then it was a very shameful, guilt-ridden thing to be pregnant as a teenager. I didn't tell anybody except, my boyfriend at the time, he knew, but my parents never knew, even up until the time they died. I never told anyone in my family. Nobody knew.
Oh, you're carrying that with that shame. That shame will get you. And then they download you probably carry that with you saying, oh, I can't do these things. Like so many people on here might feel, I can't do these things. I've done this and I've done that.
And that for women,
represent God, but what? Or,
for women of that generation, I carried that shame for 4 decades. I didn't talk about that ever till God made me put it in my book. He literally dared me to put it in the God Dare. I didn't talk about that. I didn't tell my daughter till a year before this book came out, because I was so embarrassed to tell her that I had done that. You know what I mean? It was I was so guilt-ridden that you feel like I can't, how could God use me to do something like that? You know what I mean? And there's so many women of that generation, particularly, that I messed up too much, or maybe some other sin that I've done the unforgivable thing. God cannot use me. And that is just a lie from the pit of hell. It's a lie. And we've let that weigh us down. We've held on to that. We've told ourselves that God can't forgive us. And that's not true. If you've given your heart to the Lord and you've asked him to forgive you, he's forgiven you. And I knew the day I was saved, I knew God knew. I knew Jesus knew what I'd done. I knew he forgave me, but I couldn't forgive myself. That was my problem. And I've had to work through that. I've had to get over that and let that off, just release that shame and guilt. And I've walked through it now, just to be able to talk to you about that is a huge step for me. But it was through another podcast, a gal that I was podcasting with, and she just started talking about her abortions. I was like, you can do that? It set me free that she talked about it. And I thought, all right, I've got to just be over this. I have to now talk about this. And that her freedom in it set me free. And I'm hopeful that me being able to talk about it sets somebody else free, because then it just becomes an excuse. And then we're not able to do the things God's calling us to do. Right. And it's just, we have to stop. We just have to stop and move into the things God is calling us to do, because we're missing out and other people are missing out. The things that he's calling us to do, we're holding them back. Right. And we've got to stop it. We just have to stop it, especially the women in their 50s and 60s and 70s that have held on to this junk for all these decades. It's time. Just let this stuff go. Move into what God has, because I don't care how old you are. If you're still on this planet, he's not done.
It's so true.
He's not done with you. There's more. You're here for a reason. You're not here to take up space. You're here to do stuff. You're here to help people. You're here to set people free.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say about you. Your story in your book is helping break so many, shame-filled chains that women have been carrying for so many years. So
I hope so.
Oh my gosh.
I get a lot of comments on that chapter, because I always tell people, I say, well, I hope you still like me after you read chapter 4. Because, people that know me that don't know that story, I say, well, I hope you still like me. Because, it's just a hard, it's a hard story. And well, anyway, they still like me after they read it.
There was a conversation that just came up recently about a woman who was just very angry, and just kind of snarly. And years ago, I would have thought, well, she's angry and snarly. I just, whatever, just not think anything of it. But then I was explaining, this actually came up with one of my kids. And I was just saying, everybody has a story. And sometimes when people, they're older, maybe, or maybe not, maybe they're not older, maybe they're young, but they're just that exactly, angry, snarly. You don't know what story they're carrying. You don't know they may not have started like that, but then the guilt and the shame and the fear and the doubt and shame from other people, shame from themselves, shame of what their belief, they feel who God is and what God is thinking of them. They carry that around like a sandbag. And it's just, over time, it creates, an anger that's what they're showing up, how they're showing up in the world. So that's going to break chains. In your book, you illustrate so many stories, biblical accounts, and you tie them to your life. what are some of your favorite? There's so many good ones. What are some of your favorite stories?
I love the story of Ruth. She's probably one of my favorites, just because she was her God there is real quiet. It's, God never appears to her in the book of Ruth. At least we don't hear about God appearing to her. She just sees something in her mother-in-law, Naomi.
Right.
That's, even though Naomi is depicted as, just kind of sad and bitter, and she's only known loss. She moves with her husband and her two sons, moves to this foreign country, moves from Israel because they're experiencing a famine. So she moves. The sons marry these Moabite women who were heathens, pagans.
Yeah. And
the husband dies, the sons die, and she's left with these two daughters-in-law who, she doesn't know what to do with them. The famine ends in Israel. She wants to move back, and she basically tells the daughters-in-law, hey, stay here. I'm going back, but you stay here. And the one daughter-in-law stays, but Ruth clings to her. And I love that. I just love the fact that she clings, because she sees something in Naomi. Something about Naomi's God has captured Ruth. Even though Naomi's not the happiest woman on the planet, but something about how she's expressed her faith in her God has captured Ruth's heart, even though Ruth is a Moabitess. And I don't fully know what that meant, but just something about it, just something about Naomi's faith just grabs a hold of Ruth, and just the way Ruth expresses it. I just love that love. It's like this beautiful love story, and she can't not follow. She has to go with Naomi. She has to go with her, and ends up marrying Boaz. I mean, we all know how the story ends up in the lineage of Christ, the grandmother of David. It's just a beautiful, beautiful story. And it's the way God calls her and dares her to follow Naomi. I just find it just so beautiful. I love her. I love Hannah. Hannah's another one who it's like, how desperate do you have to get until God answers your prayer? And I really find that desperation in Hannah, that she cries out to God in a way, goes into the temple. I mean, all these voices that come against Hannah from her sister wife, Peninnah, who's just horrible to her for years. Peninnah is, Hannah's married to Elkanah for 10 years, cannot have any children. So she's barren. 10 years go by. Finally, he takes another wife. She's popping out baby after baby. So another maybe 5 years go by. She's still not having children. All this other wife, and she's mean to her. She's awful. She's constantly telling, I don't know what she's saying to her, but whatever it is making Hannah miserable. So she's popping out all these babies. So she's constantly just being awful to her. And then the husband's saying, aren't I better to you than 10 sons? I'm this great guy. Why do you want sons? I'm way better to you than sons. So she's getting the voice of this awful sister wife, the voice of this husband who's kind of a narcissist. Right. Then she goes to the temple. The one thing she wants is a child. And the priest thinks she's drunk because she's praying silently at a time when silent prayer is not common. She's just like crying out to the Lord. You can just imagine her face. She's just in the temple. Right. All these voices coming against her. And the one thing she wants, she can't get. But finally, Eli, the priest, says, all right, just whatever, you bless you. And she takes that as, okay, I'm going to get what I want, and goes home happy. And it's just, but it's just this picture of how desperate do we have to get, and and she gives birth to Samuel, who becomes the greatest priest and prophet in the Bible, this amazing man who anoints Saul and David. I mean, you just think, if more of us would just get desperate in prayer, what would we birth? I just think to myself, whoa. So I just think that just the way God dared her to go really deep with the Lord, to really press in, I think, man, if more of us would just really press in like that. I don't know. So I love those two. I love a lot of them. I mean, I love Jonah, because he was just like completely went the other way when God said, go to Nineveh and do what I'm telling you to do. But Nineveh, he hated the Ninevites. You talk about prejudice. He hated those people because they were awful.
Yes.
They would put the heads of their enemies on spikes in the city walls to just to make everybody fearful of coming to their city. So he hated the Ninevites. He said, I'm going the exact opposite direction. God, of course, we know, gets swallowed by a whale, all that stuff. And it was, I forget what I wrote in the book, 6 or 8 words that he said about repenting, and the whole city repents. You're just like, oh, okay, God, you knew what you were doing. You told him to go to this city to tell these people to repent, and they repent. And for like 150 years, that city, I mean, God spared them. Then, of course, they all got wiped out eventually. But I mean, it's just amazing. The stuff.
Fear, like you said, with him being called to go to the Ninevites. I mean, we have fears, and I'm not saying that all of our fears are, they're valid, but he had a reason to be fearful.
He did have a reason to be fearful. They were a horrible nation. They were awful to their enemies. But God had told him to. I mean, if God appeared to you and told you to do something, you probably wouldn't want to run the other way. I can kind of see why he did, but on the other hand, you just kind of got to laugh. And then after they all repent, he goes and sits under a tree, and then God has a worm come and eat the tree. I mean, you just kind of go. The whole story just kind of cracks me up. But
it's a fascinating story.
People think the Bible is boring, and I just read stuff like this, and I go, y'all just need to read this with a sense of humor. But I don't know. I just find it really.
That's what I've said about your book, is that it's just so the story. And that's what I love sharing about the Bible too, is it's so realistic. I know I just grew up with this belief. I don't even think I opened the Bible when I was little. I didn't. And now I'm always telling my kids the different stories. Like, it's fascinating. But it really is. And it just shows that people walked through these incredibly fascinating, shame-filled, fear-filled, very realistic stories that all you have to do is kind of like you did with your book, just match it up with what's going on in your life, and it'll just speak to you with such relatability. I found that so cool about the Bible.
I do too. Yeah.
So years, you and your hubby Mike, David and I would just love you both so much. I have to, Mike, it's really cool if you guys watch the breakup song, Francesca's breakup song. I love this little fun fact, is that Mike is the trumpet player. There's 3, and he's the one that's right in the middle. So you see Kate's hubby and Francesca's dad there in her video. How cool. I love that you guys incorporate your family and all of you are doing. But okay, so you and Mike, okay, you're both enjoying successful careers on Broadway. And you took what you considered one of your biggest God dares. Talk about that and how it just changed the trajectory of both of your lives.
Yeah. Well, we were in New York. We had been doing, we met on the national tour of The King and I, because I had gone out as the understudy. I don't think I told this story yet. It's in the book, but I had gone out as the understudy for the leading lady and ended up taking over the role, which just the whole thing was crazy. I ended up taking over the leading role with Yul Brynner.
Well, you have to tell that story, because that's so. It goes to show when you're the understudy on Broadway, you have to be prepared.
You never know. But I went out as the understudy, and when you're an understudy, you're basically an insurance policy for the producers. You don't really expect to go on, and maybe you'll get to go on one time. But I thought, okay, I'm going to be in the chorus. It's great for my resume. I'll earn some money, but this will be great. So I go out, and about 2 months into the run of the show, I come into the theater one night, and this is in 1981, before cell phones, before computers, before any of that. It's a long time ago. But I don't even know what city we were in, Buffalo, New York, or somewhere like that. But I come into the theater one night after being out all day, about 7:15 for an 8 o'clock show. I come in, and the stage manager sees me walk in the stage door, runs up, grabs me, says, "She's sick, you're on." I had 45 minutes to whistle a happy tune to get ready. I'd never worn the costumes, never handled the props, never done the show with Yul Brynner. I'd rehearsed the show. I knew it because you rehearse with the stage manager. So your role backwards and forwards, but you've never done the show with this huge megastar. So, I mean, you learn very quickly in that moment that you just have to do it afraid. I mean, this is your job. This is what you've been hired to do. And it's like, oh my gosh, you are just thrust into this gigantic role. And it's like, all righty then.
Here you go, right out of the plane with your backpack.
Yeah, you're pushed out of the plane.
Mm-hmm.
You're bungee jumping, and you just hope you're not going to crash. So I do the show. I ended up going on for 2 weeks for the leading lady because she had pneumonia. She came back after 2 weeks. So I went back to the chorus because that's what you do. And then about, I don't know, a month or 6 weeks or so later, the producers called me one day to say, we've sent the leading lady home. We've bought out her 2-year contract and we're offering you the part. And let me tell you, it doesn't happen that way in the theater. Understudies don't get offered the part. They bring in a ringer from New York or Los Angeles. That's they just don't give it to understudies. It doesn't happen that way. And I didn't really know that. I was 26. I was a newbie in the theater world of New York. So I just said, well, sure. Okay. I didn't really even have a good agent that could negotiate for me. So I probably could have gotten a lot more money, but I didn't know what to do. I just said, sure, I'll take the role. I eventually got a better agent and, negotiated more, and it was just one of those crazy things. And I see the Lord in it now because I didn't know the Lord at the time. I was raised going to the Episcopal Church, but I never had a relationship with Jesus. I'd never asked him into my heart. I wasn't going to church at the time. I mean, I didn't know anything really about God other than my grandfather would read Bible stories to us and stuff like that. But I didn't know the Lord. But I see now, I kind of see the Lord even then wooing me. You think the King and I, it's like the King and I now. I see it now, but at the time I didn't. So I end up taking over this gigantic part. This is probably one of the biggest female roles in all of musical theater. The King and I is a huge part for a woman. You're on stage about 80% of the time. So I'd start doing this part, and I'm traveling all over the country with Yul Brynner. And then this cute guy named Mike Battistelli joins as the associate conductor. So I see this cute guy down in the orchestra pit flipping pages. I'm like,
awesome.
Oh, who's that? We got to find out about him. So, we literally met and fell in love across the footlights. And, he was just this neat guy. He wasn't an actor, which was a plus because actors were kind of flaky. And he was just interesting. He'd been a school teacher up in Williamstown, Massachusetts, and has had a doctorate in conducting and owned a car and had a dog and a house and, had a lawyer and sent his shirts out to be cleaned, dry cleaned. And I thought, that's really cool. Like most actors I knew were just flaky. He was just solid, like a real guy, just like very solid. And I thought, I need to know him. I probably need to just marry somebody like that. So we really did fall in love. So he stayed with the show for about a year. Then Yul Brynner fired him because he was distracting me too much. So he went off to join Showboat with Donald O'Connor, which actually was better for him. So he went off and did that and was doing a bunch of stuff in New York on Radio City and all that kind of stuff. But so I was with the show for about another year and a half or so. Ended up leaving in May of 1983. We got married in July of 1983. And then in March of 1984, we met the Lord. And there was a Jewish gal in New York. We still lived in New York. We started a little side business in New York, still trying, building our careers. And he was doing a lot of stuff. We're just doing different things in New York City, trying to get famous. I wanted to win a Tony. That's really all I cared about, was being famous. And, but we met this gal in business, and she kept inviting us to church. She was a born again Jew. She kept inviting us to church, kept inviting us. We kept saying no. She kept inviting us. She was relentless. And finally it was like, let's just say yes, and she'll stop bugging us.
Right.
And it was a Friday night. She said, just come. You'll love the music. There's this big gospel choir. And it was this all black church in Jamaica, Queens. So finally we said, let's just get this over with. So we take the F train to Jamaica, Queens. It's like a 40-minute drive on the subway. Not fun. This is not like where you'd go. It's not in the guidebooks in New York City where you'd want to go when you go to New York. But anyway, we get off the train, go to this, it was like a converted movie theater, big theater, probably a couple thousand people in this church. We are the only white faces in this all black church. It's actually a really cool church, great gospel choir, very spirit filled, a holiness church. I didn't know what that was. but the women are on one side, the men are on the other. Women are all dressed in skirts and no makeup, no jewelry. Very, very conservative, but great music. Very spirit-filled, which I didn't know what that meant because I'm Episcopal. You know, I don't know what the Holy Spirit is, but you walk in, it just kind of hits you. She seats us in the front row. I know she told the pastor about us. He pretty much, the whole service is geared toward us to get saved. And of course we did. You know, when you really hear the gospel for the first time and it's powerful, our hands both went up. We went to the front. We got saved that night and we pretty much never looked back. And we stayed in New York. We had our daughter the next year in 1985 and stayed another year. And then we started just feeling this unease about the career path that we were on. Both Mike and I were just feeling something's just not right about this. We just felt like this was not the path that we were supposed to be on, as we were just continuing to follow the Lord, read the Bible, go to church. And we started to question whether theater, music, all of this was what we were supposed to be doing. And we started to get some prayer, some good counsel. We just felt like we're supposed to walk away from this. And it was what we were supposed to do. And it's what we ended up doing. We both were from New Jersey. So we moved back to New Jersey, started home business, homeschooling, eventually moved to Orlando, where we were for 20 years. That's where we raised Franny, our daughter. And then ended up, we're up here now in Nashville or Franklin. And we knew it was the right thing. You know, I wouldn't change it now. I wouldn't go back to that life. It's nothing that draws me.
Right.
For a while, I mean, Franny and I did a little bit of theater in Orlando. They had some good dinner theater down there for a while. She wanted to do theater. And I thought, well, if she's going to do it, I'm going to be in it with her because I know what it's like in that world. I don't want her to be in there alone. But I knew that wasn't the life for us anymore. And it was just the right thing to do, you know, to walk away. And sometimes God will dare you to do that. We call them 90-degree turns, where you're going this way and God says, nope, you're going to turn, just kind of like Abraham, you know, walk away from everything you know. It may not make sense. And in the world's eyes, in our agents, our friends in the theater world thought we were crazy. I mean, why would you leave thriving careers? But that's what God was telling us. And it made total sense, you know.
Well, yeah, I love that. It's just, you know, you're listening and you're now you're in tune with it. But I love how you were just following the little sprinkles as you were going along. And the story is just so powerful and so beautiful that you are where you are now. And it was all just a stepping stone in your story. Yeah. You and Mike have obviously done something so right in raising Francesca. I know that you're so proud. What is the name of your other book? It's up in my office. I meant to bring it down with.
Oh, I've got it.
Oh, good.
I'll show you. I have it right here.
There it is.
It's called Growing Great Kids. Yes. This came out in 2012, and this was, if you can read the subtitle, Partner with God to, I should know this, to cultivate His purpose in your child's life. It's more of a parenting book. It's sort of the 15 things that we did just to raise her, you know. And this is the book that God dared me to write, because I was not what I consider a writer. I mean, I could write. I knew I was a good writer, but I wasn't a trained writer. I didn't graduate college. I went to 4 colleges in 2 years. I didn't graduate from any of them, though I did get on the dean's list because I wanted to be in theater. You know, I didn't really want to go to college. It wasn't my thing at the time. I wanted to do other things, but
I love that you're talking about that right there. I just want to just sidestep for a minute, because
sure,
just so many women that want to write a book. They know they're called to write a book, but they're like, oh, you know, no, people that write books, they have this degree and that degree, and I don't write, you know. And I've found too, and I bet you'll agree, having a good editor is very helpful.
Oh yeah,
your heart on paper. Right? It doesn't, I love that you're sharing that, because it wasn't about majoring in that. You're just sharing information that somebody else.
All have good editors. You have to.
Yes. If I didn't have my editor, I don't know what I would do. I send it and think it's so great. And then it comes back with all these red lines. Like, well, you know what? It's not my calling. So that's not what I would call to do. So back to Francesca. I mean, oh gosh, you raised such a beautiful young woman, so accomplished. What are some of your secrets that you can share, especially with people that might be watching, might be struggling with the teen years, how to lead them toward the Lord?
I think that the main thing, the thing that I lacked growing up, the thing that my parents, and I think it's growing up in the 50s and 60s, one thing we really tried to do with Franny was speak life over her, speak truth, call out the gifts, and don't be afraid to dream big for your child. I was never afraid to dream big for her. I was never afraid to dig deep with the Lord, to say, Lord, what do you have for her? Show me where you're taking her, show me what you have. And he showed me from the time she was pretty young that he was taking her into a life in public. I could see that. I wasn't sure what it was. At first we thought it was dance. For a while we thought it was dance. And then she had some issues with her back that precluded that we knew, okay, she's not going to be able to do that for a life career, but we knew it was something on stage. And by the time she was 16, we knew it was going to be music. And he showed me things. I mean, he would just show me, like, he'd say, that's a hit song, before she was ever signed with a music deal or living in Nashville. And I'd be like, okay. And then 3 or 4 years later, it's a hit song on the radio. So you just can't be afraid to dream big. And I think, but also always have outside confirmation. You don't want to be the American Idol mom. You remember when American Idol, back in the early days, where they're convinced that their child's the greatest singer and the child's completely tone deaf. So make sure there's somebody else telling you, yes, your child can sing. You know what I mean? Or your child can play soccer, or your child's a great football player. Whatever it is that your child's really good at, make sure somebody else besides mom and dad is saying that your child's good.
Right.
Be really careful about that, because we all think our kid's great at whatever.
Or living vicariously through the child, maybe.
Right.
Or like, well, they want it for themselves possibly, and putting that pressure on.
Yeah, be really careful about that. But so we got lots of outside confirmation to make sure that it's not just us thinking this, because we didn't want, because especially having come out of the theater, the entertainment world, we didn't want to ever put that on her, that, oh, you have to go fulfill what we left.
Right.
We didn't want to do that. But at the same time, we didn't want to.
Actually, I was thinking it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was thinking, what was your advice to her? Because, I mean, obviously it just started happening, right? And she had, I don't really know her story, but I'm imagining it just one opportunity after another. Did you ever have any, I don't want to say fear for her, but just concern with that lifestyle and the touring? And how did you feel about that as a mom who had been in that similar industry?
No, we didn't have any concern, because we understood that world, not necessarily like the Christian music world. We hadn't been in that, but having been in the entertainment world, we understood it and were able to help her navigate it, until she got signed in Nashville and then let the professionals take over. We were able to help her, Mike especially really was able to help her navigate a lot of that early on. And we were there and part of it always. Because he managed her up until she got professional management. So we were never nervous about any of that, But I think that the biggest thing is, especially when they're young, speak the word over them. Find those scriptures that really speak to you and speak life over your child. That's important. I'm thinking back to when I was young. I just was never, I don't know if it was just that generation that had come out of World War II that just never would tell you, you're going to be something. You have, God, I see this in you. I was never even told that I could sing well, and I was a really good singer. I mean, I don't sing much anymore, but I know I was good. I had to just figure it all out. I never had anybody say, you're going to make a mark in the world. You're going to do something. I had to just figure it out, which is okay. I mean, I did. But imagine if somebody tells you you're really good at something, rather than always criticism or, gosh, if you would just work harder, if you would just do this, just to speak life to your child, no matter whether they're messing up all the time or they're, not great at whatever. Just try to speak life. Try to give life to their dreams, figure out what is it that they do well, and speak into that and give them hope.
Oh,
that
sure.
it's so important to do that. I think it really makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. Well, great job as a mama. I know that you're so proud, and it's so cool for Francesca too, because she met her hubby.
She did.
Was she doing the Winter Jam tour? So she met somebody that knew the industry. So that's so helpful because they have each other. And that I'm sure helps in navigating all this.
Yeah, her husband was, if you know the group New Song, her husband is her dad. Her husband's dad is one of the founders of New Song. So Matt Goodwin, great guy, and he knows the industry backwards and forwards. Right. So he manages her now. So it's perfect because he totally understands, knows everybody, completely understands the whole Christian music world, and just navigates that really well for her. So they're a perfect duo. He's a great dad, great husband. They're just perfect together. So it's worked out really well.
Several kids, touring.
Yeah, 5 kids.
Wow. Wow.
5 kids and counting. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? She is, that's incredible. I wanted to take a quick sidestep again and talk about the adoption struggles that you had. For anybody that's watching that might be traveling that road, I'd love to have you speak to that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm the crazy woman that wanted 5 kids, but God said no. We tried, I had, when Franny was like 2.5, I had an ectopic pregnancy, which is a tubal pregnancy. And that just kind of messed everything up inside. And we tried fertility treatments. They didn't work. So then we went down the adoption road, and we tried to go to a foreign country. That didn't work. We tried private adoptions. Those didn't work. And we'd get really close, and then the mom would, for whatever reason, change her mind. And it just, they just kept falling through. One after another would fall through. We just were like, well, all right. And finally, the Lord just had to make it really clear that you're going to be the mom of an only child, which is about 20% of families in this country. There are about 20% of us have only children, which I realize now that's a really neat thing. I mean, I think it's pretty special. If you have an only child, there's a reason. Right. God has a specific path for that child. So treasure that, and I do now. Now, the one good thing I'll tell you is, and to have hope for those of you that are moms of onlys, know that the years will give perspective. 10 years from now, 5 years from now, you're going to look back and go, okay, now this makes sense. It may not right now. And it took me a long time. I mean, I'll be honest, every month I would just cry out to God. I'd be like, why won't you give me what I want? Because I couldn't understand how I would say, Lord, you're supposed to be a good father who gives good gifts. What I'm asking you for is good. I'll be a good parent. I'm going to love this child, raise this child to love you. Why won't you give me what I ask? But what I didn't understand was that what I wanted God for was what he could give me. I didn't want him for who he was. And it wasn't until I was at a worship conference, and it was in a time of deep worship. And this was after several years of struggling with this. And for me, it just took me, I was just slow to learn. And it did take me a number of years. And you can ask my husband, I probably wasn't fun to live with for a while, because this just really was hard for me. I couldn't understand why I couldn't have what I wanted, because what I wanted was good. But God doesn't always give us what we want. Just because it's good, he doesn't always give it to us. But I was deep in worship, and I just heard the Lord say, and I haven't heard him speak in my spirit very often, but this was one of the times where I just heard him say, am I enough? And it just broke something in me, because I realized that he had not been. And I had to say, you are. And I realized at that moment, if he didn't ever give me anything that I wanted again, he was enough. Just who he is. God alone, without giving me anything else, is enough.
That's for sure.
He's amazing. He's magnificent. He's, I bow down before him in worship. I don't need him to give me anything. And it just took him saying that to me to kind of break that selfish, needy, ugly thing in me to just, I want this, I want that. It was like, it almost like a slap in the face. And it wasn't. It was a velvet slap, but it was, it just was that.
I love that. It's true. We do. Sometimes we get caught up in maybe I know a lot of people say this. They feel like prayer is like a vending machine. You put in your coin and you get what you want out of there. If you push the right buttons, but it's God's will. When as believers,
and just because what we want is good doesn't mean it's God
or His will are good for. It's not.
And good is the enemy of the best. And had He given me 5 kids, we wouldn't have been able to provide for our daughter where He was taking her. We wouldn't have been able to take her. We wouldn't have had the resources. We wouldn't have had the time. Because where he was taking her, what He was doing with her, for her generation, for the message that she's been able to get out, for the music, for what she's done, what she's accomplished, it wouldn't have been able to happen. So there was a reason for it. And all I'm saying is, for those of you that have one child or for whatever reason God's allowing it, there is a reason, there's a purpose, and you'll know it eventually. You don't know it right now, but trust me, you will. So don't despise it, just accept it and thank the Lord for it, and be grateful for the one that you have, and press into that one and say, Lord, show me then, what is it about this child? Because there's something special about that child. Or if you have a child with special needs, or you have a child with a learning disability, there's a reason for that. That child has just as much of a purpose, just as much of a reason for being, just as much that child can teach the world, and just as much of a purpose, and it doesn't make a difference. You know what I mean? It's just as much of an impact that child can have.
You're such a good example of doing the possible, walking through, and then years later being able to turn around and look and seeing the perspective, almost from God's perspective. I see. So it just gives so much peace, just knowing that we hang on, and we just we hang on to learn what God's will really was. And just be thankful and patient in that in the meantime.
Years make all the difference. It really does. They give so much perspective.
For sure. I love that your book is not only so relatable, it's connected and tied to the stories of the Bible, but it's so practical, because you offer that left brain side of things, where they can do the work and dig in, and you put God Dare secrets at the end. What are those? Tell us about those.
Yeah, I have lots of little God Dare secrets at the end. They're just little things that I've learned over the years, like the impossible is God's comfort zone. Little things like that at the end of every chapter. I have scriptures that apply to that chapter. I have questions at the end of every chapter that you can use the book like a Bible study. Lots of people have done that with the book, where they'll gather a bunch of people or do it on their own, because each chapter has, 5 or 6 or 7 questions at the end. So it helps. You can do it that way, which has been neat to hear when people are doing it as a Bible study. That's a lot of fun.
Perfect. Go ahead. What were we going to say there?
Nope.
Before we wrap up, I have a couple more things I wanted to ask you about. But I want to say hey to everybody that's watching. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. Gordon Douglas is on. He is our chaplain for the Christian Comedy Association. He was confirming that how important confirmation is. Get confirmation. He said that was great advice. Crystal Bledsoe she said with what you were, I think when you were just talking about waiting and hearing and seeing God's perspective, she said that's a hard lesson to learn. Instead of taking from God, we need to be in communion with God. And she thanked you for sharing with that. So many, Leslie, Amanda, hey, everybody. So thank you all for sharing your thoughts and for being here with us. So what would you, anything else that you would love to share with the viewers that are watching right now, that maybe they want to give up. They're just having just a rough time. Anything else that you'd love to share, and, the thoughts you'd love to share as we wrap up?
Yeah, I think don't give up. Don't ever give up on God. I mean, right now it's a hard time for everybody, just with all this, craziness in the world. And it's just been 2020 is the year we all just going to want to forget. Just
Mhm.
pretend never happened.
And again, we'll walk through it. And as Amanda Hebert just said, she said, so true. The years do make a difference. I mean, we're going to look back at all this 2020 and say, okay, I mean, I know it doesn't seem like that, but I just have faith that we'll look back and go, okay, I will tell you, I don't want to get sidetracked on COVID right now, but just my daughter said it best the other day. She said, I didn't realize how much I appreciated music in the park and just being able to go and do that. And I mean, we're walking through this, and I know so many of us have such an appreciation for the simple things that we don't have right now. So
I know they're canceling the Thanksgiving Day parade, or they're going to reimagine it. What does that mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
We'll look back and see one day what this was all about.
I don't know. I think we just need to, if anything more, just press in more to the Lord, just try to rest in him. That's what he's telling me, I tend to be a striver, I'll just, oh Lord, I have to do this. I have to do that. And it's like, just chill, Kate, just relax, just rest in me. And I think that's probably good advice for all of us, especially now with holidays coming up, with the election coming up. Lord knows what that's going to bring on this country. Right. We need to pray more, pray for peace, pray for the country, pray for.
Oh my gosh, I keep praying for unity. Yes, for
sure. I love it. It could get crazy. I mean, it could just get crazy, but just probably try to rest in him. I don't know, that I know is what I need to be doing, because I just tend to. I tend to let things make me strive and make me think I have to not compete, but I've got to work hard to do what she's doing or what he's doing. And it's like, no, just listen to me and do what I'm telling you to do. It's
Lord have mercy. Do I know that? Just to slow down, stop and listen. I was just reflecting on this last week, I think it was, and it just pierced my heart. That that Jesus ascended into heaven, and I love that it says he was seated at the right hand of the Father. He sat down. Don't we just let's follow his lead? He was Jesus, and he was seated at the right hand of the Father, and that just it just spoke to me that we and it's so hard. And I know with people that they're battling this calling or this fear and the doubt, it's just to sit and just clear your mind and allow the possibility to receive what you need to receive. And when we're so busy and crazy and so much, we're going to miss it. It's like that, I feel like God is like that, the King's Keys, which I love that it's like you said about the King and I, and then, meaning God. And then we used to play the game, the King's Keys, where you'd have to look for something and we'd shout, you're warm, or you're cold, or you're cold. I just imagine in a funny way, just God saying, you're going the wrong way. Just sit. And we can't do that unless we are still.
I think he's saying, sit down and shut up. Most of the time to me, he's like, shut up.
It's the truth. It's the truth. Oh my gosh. Well, here it is again, the God Dare. Find it. I know that you'll love it. I enjoyed every second of it. I want to talk to you more. So hang on. I'm going to close out here in a moment, but hang on, because I want to talk to you backstage if you have a couple minutes.
Okay.
But I just wanted to thank you so much, Kate, for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And I know you've just poured into so many hearts today, and I'm so, so thankful.
Thank you, Marlo. I just love being with you anytime. You need to move to Franklin, though.
Girl,
just saying.
When I was there with you too, riding around in your golf cart in your beautiful community, I was like, I called David and I said, okay, if we're moving, I think I know where.
I know. You're coming.
I want to take him there so he can see how cool it is. So I loved it. Loved every minute with you guys. We'll give Mike our love you. And I'm, again, so thankful for you.
I will. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Okay. I'll be right there. Hold on. Okay, everybody. Well, wasn't that power packed? Kate is amazing. And I just wanted to leave you with the thought of what she said. And she mentions it in her book, that the impossible is God's comfort zone. I just wanted to read a couple of the lyrics from Francesca's song, the breakup song. You have to go and find it. She just says in her chorus, she says, fear, you don't own me. There ain't no room in this story. And I ain't got time for you telling me what I'm not. Like, you know me well, guess what? I know who I am. I know I'm strong and I'm free. I've got my own identity. So fear, you will never be welcome here. such a powerful way to wrap up this incredible journey of Kate Battistelli, and just walking the steps, turning around and looking and seeing what God had in mind from his perspective as we look back. So I hope this spoke to so many of you. It was such a blessing for me. It warmed my heart, and just want to thank you all for being here. Okay, I'll see you next week on Coffee Chat at the Cubbyhole. But until then, be blessed and have a great day. Bye, everybody.